The sun beat down on the small, forgotten town like it was punishing it. Dust hung in the air, the kind that clung to your lungs and left a bitter taste behind. Inside a torn canvas tent at the edge of the settlement, a woman's screams broke through the stillness. "Hold on, Mary," the midwife whispered, pressing a damp cloth to her forehead. But the young woman was too weak to answer. Her body trembled, her skin pale, her breath ragged. After one last cry, the sound that filled the air wasn't hers, it was a baby's. A small, fragile girl, her skin flushed and trembling, her tiny fists clenched as if she were already fighting for her life. The mother's lips quivered into a weak smile. "She's beautiful," she whispered, tears sliding down her cheeks. "My baby girl." But before she could hold her, rough hands yanked the newborn away. Her husband, a bitter man named Hank, stood at the doorway with a sneer. "We don't need another mouth to feed," he spat. "Especially not a useless girl." The midwife froze, clutching the crying baby close. "You can't mean that, Hank. She's minutes old." "I mean every damn word," he growled. "There's a buyer in town. Folks will pay something for a girl, someone always does." Mary's cry turned into a plea, hoarse and heart-shattering. "No. Please, don't take her." She tried to sit up, but the pain tore through her body. She was still bleeding, still fragile, but her desperation was stronger than her strength. Hank didn't look back. He snatched the baby from the midwife and stormed out into the burning sun. The tiny infant screamed as the world's harshness greeted her for the first time. Mary collapsed back onto the bed, sobbing until her voice broke. "Please, God, don't let her be alone." Outside, the sound of the baby's cries faded into the distance, carried away by the wind, mingling with the calls of the auctioneer in the nearby square. The morning sun crawled across the dry Texas plains, painting everything in shades of gold and rust. At the edge of that endless land stood Elias Turner's ranch, miles of open field, weathered fences, and silence that seemed to stretch forever. The kind of silence that reminded a man how alone he really was. Elias sat on his porch, a cup of black coffee cooling in his hands. The old rocking chair creaked beneath him, its rhythm the only sound besides the low hum of wind through the prairie grass. He used to love mornings like this. When his wife, Clara, was alive, she'd hum while she made biscuits, and he'd tease her that she sang better than the radio. Their laughter once filled this house, but that was before the stillbirth, before the nights she cried herself to sleep, and before her heart simply gave out from grief. Since then, the ranch had grown quieter than a graveyard. The rooms were filled with memories instead of voices. The only company Elias had left was his horse, Dusty, and an old dog that slept by the porch steps. He stared out at the horizon, the sun breaking through a thin layer of clouds. "Another day," he muttered to himself. "And for what?" That's when Ray, one of his ranch hands, rode up, mud splattering from his boots. "Morning, boss," he said, tipping his hat. "Heard something strange in town. Folks say they're auctioning off a newborn girl. Can you believe that?" Elias froze, lowering his coffee cup slowly. "A baby?" Ray nodded, disgust in his voice. "Said her folks didn't want her. Can't stomach that kind of cruelty." Elias didn't speak. His jaw tightened as a wave of something deep, something buried, rose inside him. The memory of his wife holding a baby blanket that never got used. The tiny crib he never had the courage to take apart. He set his cup down and stood, grabbing his old coat from the railing. "Ray," he said quietly. "Saddle up, Dusty." Ray blinked. "What for?" Elias looked out toward the town, eyes dark but determined. "Greater than, no child deserves to start life like that. Not while I'm still breathing." The town square buzzed with noise, the restless murmur of men, the stamping of cattle, the rattle of wagons on the dirt road. It was supposed to be a regular Saturday auction, where livestock changed hands and laborers were hired. But today, something darker hung in the air. On a rough wooden crate near the stage lay a newborn baby girl, wrapped in a thin, torn blanket. Her tiny cries were drowned out by laughter and cruel whispers. The auctioneer, a stout man with a red face, stood tall beside her, shouting over the noise. "Greater than, all right, folks. Got a young one here. Barely a day old. Her folks say they can't keep her. Anyone got a use for her. Let's start the bidding at $10. A few men chuckled. One said, "What's she good for? Ain't gonna plow no field." Another sneered, "Maybe someone'll raise her for chores." The auctioneer frowned, his voice booming again. "Come on, boys, she's healthy enough. Worth something to somebody." That's when Elias Turner rode in. The crowd turned as his horse clopped to a stop, his tall frame shadowed by the noon sun. He dismounted slowly, his boots kicking up dust. His eyes, hardened by years of loss, softened the moment he saw the baby. She was crying, small, weak, and alone, and somehow, he could hear her over all the noise. He pushed through the crowd, every step deliberate. "How much?" he asked quietly. The auctioneer blinked. "For the baby." Elias nodded once. "Yeah, I'll take her." The men around him muttered. "You serious, Turner? Ain't you got enough work without feedin' someone else's mistake?" Elias's voice was calm, steady. "Some mistakes belong to the men who made 'em, not the ones who were born into 'em." The auctioneer swallowed, unsure how to respond. $10, then. Elias handed him every bill he had in his wallet. 20. "Keep the change." He stepped forward, lifting the baby gently into his arms. She quieted instantly, her tiny fingers curling around his thumb. For the first time in years, Elias felt something stir in his chest, warmth, fragile and alive. The late afternoon sun dipped low over the dusty plains as Elias Turner rode away from town, the tiny baby cradled against his chest. The once rowdy sounds of the auction faded behind him, replaced by the rhythmic clop of hooves and the gentle sigh of the wind. He held the child close, careful not to jostle her. She had fallen quiet now, her little face nestled against his worn flannel shirt. Every so often, she let out a soft sigh, the kind that tugged at something deep inside him. Elias had spent most of his adult life alone on the ranch. He'd buried his wife 5 years ago, along with the dreams they'd once shared of raising a family. After that, the world had turned gray, each sunrise just another day to survive. He'd learned to keep to himself, to talk more to his horses than to people. But now, as he looked down at the small, fragile life in his arms, something in him began to stir, a feeling he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. "Don't you worry, little one," he murmured softly. "Ain't nobody gonna hurt you again." The baby shifted slightly, her tiny fingers clutching his shirt as if she understood. The ride was long, and the shadows grew longer. At one point, Elias stopped near a stream to rest. He dipped his handkerchief into the cool water and wiped the baby's face, careful and gentle. Then he opened a small bundle he'd brought from town, milk in a soft cloth. He had no idea how to care for a newborn, but somehow, his hands seemed to know what to do. "You're tougher than you look," he said with a faint smile. "Guess we both are." The wind rustled the tall grass, and in that moment, Elias looked around at the vastness of the land, golden fields stretching to the horizon, his lonely ranch waiting beyond. For years, it had been empty, quiet, haunted by ghosts of what could have been. But tonight, when he crossed that fence line, he wouldn't be alone anymore. The moon hung high over the Turner ranch, bathing the old wooden house in a soft silver glow. Elias pushed open the door with one hand, the other still holding the baby close. The air inside smelled faintly of hay, wood smoke, and loneliness. For years, that smell had been all he knew. But tonight, it felt different, warmer somehow. He set his hat on the table and looked around. Everything was as it had been since his wife passed, the rocking chair in the corner, her favorite quilt folded neatly by the hearth, the silence that used to echo too loud. Now, that silence was broken by the faintest sound, a baby's quiet whimper. Elias smiled gently. "I know, sweetheart, this old place don't look like much. But it's yours now." He placed her carefully in a small wooden box lined with a soft blanket. Then he lit the fire, its golden light filling the room. He found a glass bottle, warmed some milk, and fed her slowly, clumsily, whispering as he did. "You don't got a name yet," he said softly. "Seems unfair, don't it? Maybe we'll fix that tomorrow." She blinked up at him, her eyes wide and curious, as if she already knew she was safe. That night, Elias sat in the rocking chair with her resting against his chest. The fire crackled, and the wind howled outside, but for the first time in years, he didn't feel the ache of solitude. He felt peace, real, bone-deep peace. In the days that followed, word spread through town. Some folks whispered that Elias Turner had lost his mind, buying a baby when he couldn't even keep his cattle in line. But Elias didn't care. He mended fences, tended to the land, and when he came home, he'd hum soft lullabies while the little girl slept in his arms. Months later, when she laughed for the first time, a bright, ringing sound that filled the quiet house, Elias felt something in his chest break open and heal all at once.